So, for today's episode, I kind of want to harken back and kind of return to an old theme of ours from the early days of Hack Job. We had our first couple episodes out where everything was based around a question. I want to ask a question today, and I want to spend most of the day trying to answer that question. We are talking about The Island, a Netflix show. Just came out a few weeks ago. This is probably the most up-to-date thing that we've ever covered on this show. So, who knows when this episode will air. But I want to ask the question, does this show deserve the very rare title of So Bad It's Good? Because, people talk about it a lot. People always say, so bad it's good. It's a genre. Everybody's always, calling things so bad it's good. But, if you really think about it, there's a very short list of things that actually fall into that category. And everybody knows those movies and shows, and they watch them over and over and over. We've already talked about The Room on this show. Since this thing hasn't been out for very long, not a lot of people have seen it. Not a lot of opinions have been drawn, but I think this is a contender. I'm not quite ready to put my stamp on it and say, yes, I think this is so bad it's good, but I definitely want to have that conversation because I'm considering it. What do you think, Jim?
Well, I remember we were talking about it before about that the genre of so bad it's good stems from it being bad. It's sort of like an evolution of the bad franchise or bad movie. So my question then is, if we're gonna, rope it into this sort of category, is there criteria or is it just purely subjective? Can we find little check boxes that allow us to define a movie as or differentiating it from bad to so bad it's good?
Well, I don't think there's an exact science, but I do think that there are certain conditions that need to apply. First off, it has to be completely serious. The people who make it can't be trying to make something so bad it's good. That never works. I think I did not get the sense that this movie or this television show, this series basically on Netflix, I did not get the sense that it was tongue-in-cheek or it was self-aware or it was a spoof or anything like that. Some people thought that at first, but if you watch through the whole thing, I think they were playing it completely seriously, which is one of the reasons why I actually ended up enjoying it as much as I did, because it sucks and it's like they don't even realize it.
Yeah, it definitely didn't try to pull the satire card. It was trying to have like a genuine story with genuine characters and just that plot that's supposed to hook you in and take you somewhere.
It's very mysterious. They thought they were so deep.
Put some twists in there.
Yeah. So we'll get into the details. But just a quick little, not even a summary, but just a description so you know what we're talking about. It's this show. It just dropped on Netflix. And I don't know if any of you out there have ever seen Lost, but it's Lost. It's basically Lost. I mean, the whole conceit of what's actually going on is not the same as Lost, but it's just that same premise. Bunch of people wind up on an island. They don't know why they're there. I guess in Lost it was a plane crash, so they kind of knew why they were there. But still, it has that same undercurrent of mystery, right? Even though it took a very, very long time for anything to really like come to fruition in Lost, or for us to really even have even like the smallest sense of what was going on in that island. Even right out the gate, there was some weird stuff in Lost that like caught your eye right away. You have and I apologize in advance, I'm going to be talking a lot about Lost tonight because I love Lost and I also hate Lost. And I would love to have a full episode on Lost one day, but I don't think we're going to get a chance to because it's just such a long series. And I don't want to really subject anyone to it because it's so not worth it in the end. But regardless, it does a lot of things right out of the gate. It has a couple, I would say even 3, in my opinion, really strong, good seasons. And I think that we're going to mostly be comparing this show to those first 3 seasons. But even in the first episode, a long way away from actually finding out what's going on, they're still sowing seeds of like, okay, there's some crazy shit on this island. There's like this loud noise in the distance that knocking down trees. Nobody knows what that is. They find a dead polar bear on a tropical island. So yeah, you can definitely see a lot of a lot of hints at that in this show. In fact, the very like opening scene is a very shameless Lost ripoff where they open with her eye opening on the beach. That's exactly what happens with Jack in Lost. And yeah, it's not, it's like Lost in that respect, but it also moves really fast. In the first episode, they find just a giant sign that just says like "Find your way back," which is dumb. And by 3 episodes in, you already know the entire conceit of what's going on and what the motivations are for like the people who put them there. And then by the 7th, like the last episode, it's completely resolved one of the characters' storylines in a way that is really dumb and just not satisfying in any way whatsoever.
Pretty much the subtlety of a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know I haven't personally watched the Lost series myself, but from what I've heard, it's definitely, it built its plot devices and its character development on a lot of layers of and it's really put it on thick so that you felt good when something was revealed about the character, and you could sort of, I guess they wanted to take that entire 7 season, I think it was like 7 seasons long,
6,
and when they want to take all those 6 seasons and squish them into 7 episode series with this show. And
yeah, well, I will give them this, right? The big problem with Lost, it's actually, if you've heard my complaints about the end of Game of Thrones, because I had a very similar experience where I loved the show for like 4 seasons, and then I spent a couple more seasons pretending that I liked it just because I had sunk so much cost into it at that point, and then by the end I was so entirely let down by the ending, but it still took me a little while to like accept that it was bad. But Lost was actually kind of the opposite of Game of Thrones, right? Where Game of Thrones, they had a very clear idea of where they wanted to end, and they had to force everything into that, even if it didn't fit particularly well. Lost was the exact opposite. And honestly, it's a common problem for J.J. Abrams, which is why I'm so afraid about this 3rd Star Wars movie that's coming out. But he loves setting up mysteries, and he does it really well. Setting up mysteries. He's not very good with payoff, and you could really tell that in Lost. I mean, that was one of the first really big things that he did. It kind of put him on the map. He was the creator of that show, the executive producer. He wasn't the main writer by the end, but still, like, he was the one who was driving the story. And they asked a lot of really big questions in the beginning, and it was really developing, and the characters were great, and you just really wanted to know what happened. And then in the end, you realize they had no idea where they were going. I will say this for the island. They knew where they were going. It was stupid and it was disappointing, but they knew where they were going.
Yeah. I mean, and somehow they seem to get their plot lost as well, as far as like, because I mean, they squeeze. Okay. So from the get-go, we watched the trailer together. Right. And
yes, the trailer, we have to address the trailer. It's important.
Yeah. I think this is the best time to do it. So for those of you who have Netflix, go watch the trailer, and then that's it, because we'll describe the rest of it to you, because it's not like the trailer whatsoever. You get these openings of Fyre Festival. A Fyre Festival, it was a sort of a hoax that all these rich people and these really beautiful women and hot guys would go to this island and just party all the time, and it would just be like a paradise.
It was supposed to be a music festival.
Yeah.
But they didn't get to book any of the talent, and they didn't have any of the infrastructure, and they didn't have anything to like provide for any of these people. And it didn't end up being on a private island either. They just like ended up on some random island in the Bahamas that might not even be there anymore.
Yeah, basically it just boiled down to just a hoax. And but the trailers for Fyre Festival were very similar to the trailers for the island.
Honestly, like there might have been footage that they literally just pulled from the the promotion. Yeah, so it's it's just like pictures of like these hot people on this island, like, oh, look at this, it's gonna be all about Fyre Festival, and we're gonna spoof Fyre Festival, intercut with like actual scenes from the show.
Yeah, and then it switches to it transitions into a sort of cabin in the woods, where you have these executives in the background, with all these hundreds of monitors viewing all of the guests, and you're like, oh, so you have this higher entity viewing all of the actions and the circumstances that are there, and they're going to throw these obstacles their way. So and it plays that throughout the trailer. These people watching, and then they do some stuff, and all of a sudden the islanders start to die off one by one, and you're like, whoa, cabin in the woods, on a tropical island, so bungalow in the beach, and it was such a good looked like such a good premise, and what we got instead was nothing like that.
Well, I will be honest though. I didn't get that sense at all of like, I mean, I'm sure that the whole Fire Festival thing would have been fun, but I knew from the trailer that this was gonna be absolutely terrible just because of the way like the acting just looked so like awful. That it was the trailer that made me want to cover this. I saw that trailer and I'm like, this is gonna be such ass. We gotta watch this.
Yeah,
And it did not disappoint.
it's just but the premise itself got me hooked. I was like, I would have loved to see a movie, and it's more like maybe for future reference. I would have loved to see a movie where it sort of satirized the Fire Festival and then turned it into the sort of like it wasn't like just a mistake. It was all done on purpose to really screw with people and then have some premise. Oh, I would have loved that, but instead we got this.
Yeah, so take Fire Festival out and replace it with Lost, and that's basically what you get. The characters suck too. I mean, it's so I guess, do we want to spoil things? I think we can spoil things, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so the big twist is that the island is not real. That it's just a simulation that is in their heads, and they're all actually in jail. They're all on death row, and this is like a big experiment to try and figure out if we can
Rehabilitate.
exactly, rehabilitate people. So we're going to wipe their memories and put them on this island and see what they do to each other and see if they behave better. Which, look, I love high concept trash like this. It is my Coke. Like, Netflix had this as a 98% match for me, and if this was quality, that would be absolutely correct. I love this stuff. It's not quality, but I did end up enjoying it for completely opposite reasons. But this was not well done. First off, the big like a giant narrative device that kind of like allows them to kind of interact in the beginning is that they are all completely mind washed. Like, they have amnesia. None of them know who they are. They don't know why they're on the island. They're just like seven. Is it seven of them? Maybe 10. I think 10. There's like 10 of them. 10 just completely blank slates. They remember how to talk and walk and do things, but they don't know who they are. They don't know who anyone else is. They don't know what their names are. They have to like look at the tags on the back of their shirts to figure out what their names are. And just conveniently, they all happen to have last names that also worked as first names because they were all called by their last names, but they thought they were the first names, which, whatever. I can forgive that, but I did think that was a little convenient. Yeah, I have said this before. I think I mentioned it when we talked a little bit briefly about Captain Marvel. I hate amnesia as a narrative device. Yeah, nothing like it. You want me to care about your characters. How am I going to figure out who your characters are if they don't even know who they are? These people, they had no there were no personalities. They kind of developed into personalities, but everyone's personality was just they were a huge bitch. Like, everyone, and I guess, okay, they're all inmates, fine. They're going to be mean to each other. But, like, it made no sense. Like, right out of the gate, they're not trying to cooperate with each other. They're just, it's literally total drama island, quote unquote. Like, the whole time, they're just bitching at each other, fighting over stupid things. I mean, like, I am not one to typically criticize stories based off of characters not doing things that are logical, because I know a lot of people bring that up, and I think that's a stupid thing to criticize stories on because people are not logical. People do illogical things all the damn time. But this is more than just that. It's not that they weren't logical. They weren't behaving like any human ever would. Like, they weren't trying to cooperate. They were bitching and fighting over nothing.
Well, I think the writers or whoever came up with this plot was sort of getting ahead of themselves with the whole idea that they're all convicts, and therefore, because they're convicts, they would justify their behavior in the beginning. For example, there is a guy that takes this our main character to the waterfall, or they discover a waterfall, and there's some romantic tension between them. And all of a sudden, it goes from 0 to 100 really quick, and he just tries to rape her. Like, she says no, he just tries to get on top of her, and That's it, right? And as the audience member, we're trying to unpack this. And okay, they're in a deserted island. They got to worry about food, water, shelter. Like there's a rationale. There's rules to the game as far as like a survival movie goes. And for him to jump that and just like, oh, we found fresh water, let me fuck you. It's to me, it's the right. It seems to me that the person who wrote the plot was just like, well, it's because they're convicts. They're leaking through.
So here's the thing, though. I don't think that on itself is a problem, because that is like, and I actually think that there was some very interesting dynamics that they raise that they didn't deal with well at all. But it would be really interesting if this was in the hands of a more competent screenwriter, because I'm not super surprised that he, someone who was in a past life a rapist would try to,
well,
yeah, and that alone, that unto itself is fine. And the fact that they go back to the camp and the people, everyone there doesn't know who to believe, shitty as hell, but that's actually kind of realistic in a weird, like, disgusting way, where there's a lot of there's a big part of our culture that doubts women when they have like legitimate accusations of sexual assault. So that on its own is actually something that, if you handle that with care, you could really say something. You could have this really interesting dynamic of like, she is now trapped on this island with her abuser, and either no one believes her, or maybe they do believe her. It doesn't matter. There's no justice system. There's no way for her to get revenge other than like actually attacking him, which she doesn't want to do because they have to like, get along. If you dealt with that properly, you could say a lot. And they didn't do that.
I know. Well, yeah, and I'm not faulting the rape itself, because I do agree with you that it's a really good piece of commentary to talk about and to think about when it comes to the fact that you're on a place where there are no rules with people that you barely know, and the established friendships that you have are solely on the basis of survival. However, the thing that I'm going to critique here is the timing. You have your audience that's with you trying to unpack all of this stuff. They're trying, okay, we have 10 characters. We're trying to just like distinguish their personalities. They don't know who they are. So we're kind of just as lost as the characters are. And when you throw in something like that on the first night, it's gonna raise a lot of questions for the audience. And they're not gonna have time to unpack that sort of commentary, that deep seated, thing that, oh, maybe we should be giving this much more thought. Why not have the characters interact with each other a little bit more? And when the survival aspect is sort of taken care of, then he can sort of use that to take advantage of her. And then then you have more time to unpack that whole thing rather than just trying to rush it in the beginning with everything else. And to me, it sort of gets lost. Takes you more as a surprise rather than in awe,
That's true. I also think that it's also a kind of an illustration of how none of these characters make sense. So okay, that happens, right? They go back to the island. They have the whole like, he said, she said, nobody knows what to believe. It's kind of made a little more ridiculous because he's kind of like, you would think that they would trust her because she has been more reliable in helping them. But for whatever reason, just because there's this one crazy redhead chick who hates her, everybody thinks that our main character, like they call her a bitch for no reason. But whatever. Okay, they don't know who to believe. Then the dude, in like maybe that scene or maybe a later scene, whatever, attacks another guy, shackles the girl again, our main character, takes her knife away from her, and holds everyone at knife point. And then they disarm him and kick him out. And following that, their response is, oh, main character girl, you need to leave too because you were egging him on. Like, That is ridiculous. I understand that they don't believe her right away. It sucks. I think that they should, but that's understandable. But this whole like, oh, we're completely agnostic here, we don't take sides, when this dude pulls a knife on us, like, no, not even rational here. No, like, just human,
it's instinctual.
Yeah, exactly. No instinctual human, or not even human, a chimp wouldn't behave that way. It just goes to the point, like, these characters are not fleshed out. They find out things about themselves later through no like actual discovery. It just kind of like flashes back to them. And so we kind of get that little Lost thing too, where like they have character flashbacks, but none of it's deep. It really just shows what they did. But despite all of this, I still really enjoyed this because I had so much fun yelling at the screen. right? I mean, I don't know. Did you get that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. A little alcohol or a lot of alcohol was involved, but
That is
as,
true.
as far as the, yeah, it's on the same level as, it's in between a movie and a video game. So it's an interactive experience, but it's one sided. That's what I like to sort of place these movies at, where, and I place a lot of reality TV shows with this as well, where with a regular movie, you sit there and you just let it immerse you, and you let it sink in and you think about it. And with these movies, though, they're so bad and they're very surface level plot. It gets you involved. It's not so much as like it's giving you feedback on what you're saying, like a video game would, but it allows you to just get it all out and just interact with the movie or the show that way. And that's what I sort of love about these so bad it's good.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that makes this more of the so bad it's good for me. It's fun to yell at, and it's also the kind of thing that is improved dramatically by watching it with friends.
Yes.
So, for instance, I watched the first 3 or 4 episodes on my own, and then I was up in your guys' neck of the woods this weekend, and I hung out, and we actually watched the rest of it all together. And this is, by the way, this is the first thing I think we've ever done where we watched it together, so that's kind of neat. But I was like excited to watch the first 3 episodes again. I even said, like, I want to watch you guys experience this. There are like little bits here and there where they do things that are completely ridiculous. And since I didn't give a shit about spoiling because it's not a good show, I would just be like, oh guys, just wait for the next scene. What they do is just absolutely bonkers, and you're not going to be able to like even sit down without screaming. And that was our Friday night, and it was fun. And I want to do it again.
Yeah, and it's that sort of improvement. It's like it's that sort of that gag reel commentary that you would see in the likes of like Mystery Science Theater or even America's Funniest Home Videos, where they just they let the video play, they let it happen. Very surface level stuff, and it's the commentary itself that actually provides the dopamine rush of watching the movie rather than the actual plot itself.
And there were some of the characters who like they were so ridiculous, and I enjoyed their ridiculousness. So, like, for instance, there's this one guy, I think his name's Donovan or like Dominic or whatever. He gets like almost eaten by a shark early, but he survives, and this one girl like nurses him back to health. And throughout like the first I'm gonna say like 5 or so episodes. Well, for the first couple episodes, he just doesn't talk because he's like fucking dying. But when he comes back and he's like talking with people, he's so incredibly like creepy with this girl. And like for a while it was just like it made me uncomfortable, and it was like cringe, and I'm like, oh, I don't this is just weird. And then when they showed his backstory, I was instantly on board. Like obviously I didn't like the character, but like I was completely with the show with what they were doing, because they showed him as like his crime was that he stalked a girl and then killed her because she wouldn't be with him, and he was the whole way just like completely freaking creepy about it. And then you could see that from that light, and you're like, okay, now we can have fun with this. This is the character we're dealing with. He's a freak, and he's really creepy. And like I don't know, I enjoyed that. I couldn't even tell you, did he die at the end? I don't remember. But like
no, I don't think he did.
And that's the thing, like they blow so many reveals like before you would expect it to. The main character wakes up in the jail, and she's told the whole conceit of the thing 3 episodes in. And then like the next episode, these like 2 people show up from the outside to like try and trick the people into thinking that they're really convicts, and not convicts, they're actually outcasts on the island. And like not 10 minutes into the conversation, they figure it out, and the 2 are like, well, I guess we blew our cover here. And then they just like spend the rest of the show like just screwing with them, and it's just like so not what you're expecting. Like you want there to be like, no, I need the mystery to like
that subterfuge
to brew a little bit. It's like it's like you just took a tea bag, you dip it in some hot water and drink it right away. Like and that's kind of like it's like uncanny. It's like uncanny television. It's uncanny writing, and it's honestly kind of enjoyable from that perspective, because this is definitely not how I would write something like this.
Well, it's sort of that It's sort of that bad relationship where like you keep expecting the show to have some sort of handle on the mechanics of what makes a good TV show, and it sort of sets it up and then it just knocks it down. So and you just get disappointed, but then you hope for the next device and you're like, okay, well maybe they'll do better on this, and then just nope, just knocks it down.
And we thought because of that, because at every corner they had another stupid little twist, that there was going to be some big twist at the end that was going to undermine the whole thing. And to be fair, there was, but it was so dumb and disappointing. So again, they reveal like right away that she is in a jail. And then by the end, it's clear that she's, I guess, innocent, but like, who even cares at that point? And then at the end, when she's talking to the psychiatrist like reveals this big secret to us. And we're like, oh boy, what's going on? Is she the only one? Is the prison actually a simulation? Are all the people that are there actually just in her mind? Is her husband actually not
That was an army, right?
Yeah, maybe he's dead too. Like, what's going on? No, she's just old. That's the twist.
Yeah.
She's actually been in there for a while, and she's been on death row for like, so she's now in like her 60s, and oh, you get to go home, but you're really old now, and your husband's gonna die. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, that's not even. What am I supposed to do with that?
I mean, even with the expectation of what a bad show would do. So, like, yeah, you're expecting like, okay, simulation, cool, cool, and then you get to the end, and you're like, is it a simulation inside of a simulation? Because that's what a bad show would
and
do.
That would be hacky as shit. But like, because like, okay, I didn't want a happy ending, but you know, I wanted if you're gonna give me a crushing ending, I want something that's actually crushing, not something that's like, oops, sorry,
Yeah,
we screwed up for 30 years. Like,
it even fails on the being like having the mechanics of a bad TV show.
yeah,
Because even a bad TV show would try to wrap it up in a ridiculous way, but at least it wraps it up. Whereas this is like, just lets it flow out, and you see it spill all over the floor, and you're just like, oh, all right, well, somebody has to clean it up, and then everyone just leaves.
And then she just kind of walks away, and the rest of them are still on the island. And I guess they're gonna have another season. The warden ends up on there too, but like, they want another season. I don't think they're gonna get another season. But like, none of the other characters matter. There's the southern chick who, like, apparently she murdered her kids. So, like, you know, you don't really want her to be redeemed, even though they totally frame it like those kids totally deserved it. Which, like, I don't know if that's how you want to frame. I don't know if that's how you want to frame that. But like,
they definitely tried to redeem her.
Yeah, and I was sitting there thinking like, man, those kids suck. But like, you know, she killed them. Like, what are you gonna do with her now? You gonna redeem the lady who killed her kids? Like, I don't think that's gonna work.
Yeah. Obviously, like it's hard to really redeem criminals. I mean, there's some crimes that like you can sort of like stretch to the longest yard and say like the nurse who would euthanize people who wanted it, even though the doctor said she couldn't.
Right.
Sort of this angel of death. Like you're like, it's a little redeemable from a moral standpoint, but that was like it.
That's why this is just so like, it's just weird, right? Because what are they trying to do with the whole death row thing? I mean, you have people like, again, the nurse who's killing people because they want it, but they're not allowed to. And like, if you're the type of person who believes in medically assisted suicide, you know, that's you look at that person as maybe a hero, maybe not necessarily a hero, but like someone who doesn't deserve to be there. And then you have, you know, our main character who's innocent, she didn't do it, and like other people who like, oh, the dude, he accidentally killed his mother-in-law because she was you know, threatening him, and he didn't mean to. And then, oh, you know, there's this southern girl, she murdered both of her kids. What? And there's the dweeby guy, he did a mass shooting. Sorry, what? Wait, what?
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, I can't sympathize with it. Like, and he saves the girl, and you're supposed to be like, oh, like I'm happy that the Columbine shooter saved one person.
Right.
Yeah.
He's framed as a good character.
Like because he was defending against the really creepy guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, in hindsight is before you show off who he is, and you're like, oh, okay, like there's some ethically good character that's just like there as like a foundation for stability, and then he just shows his past, and you're just like, oh, and then you feel like a shitty human being.
Yeah, and he and Nurse Girl are like running away from this creepy dude, and you know everyone's like, "Oh my god, I hope they survive." And if you like, you just count the body counts of both of them. Like this bitch, like maybe you agree with her, maybe you don't. She euthanized an entire hospital,
Yeah.
and then this dude, I don't know where it was. It was like a mall, and he was just like going to town with a carbine. Meanwhile, other dude killed one person. Not good. Really creepy. I don't like him as a character, but he's the bad guy here. Like it's
Just because he's creepy.
Ah!
Like, I mean, it plays with your mind and your emotions.
And so it begs the question: what were they trying to say? Because I mean, you do something like this, right? You're dealing with criminals. You're dealing with like this very deep concept of like, who are we at heart? Are we the same people that we are if all of our memories are wiped? Like, there's some philosophical stuff there. You can do a lot with that. But like, I don't get the sense that I don't think that they got the sense that like that there would be any kind of debate or nuance. I think they were just like, oh yeah, they're murderers. We wiped their mind. They're still murderers. Are you sure? Because I'm not necessarily sure I want to just jump on that train right away. And so like, what's the point? Are they pro this? I don't think so, because the way that like the prison is operating is like ridiculous. The nurse is like a total bitch, and like the people who are overseeing the treatment are like really stuck up academics, and you get the sense like, okay, they don't like the stuck up academics. And when they're in the same room with the stuck up academics, they kind of frame the warden as like the good guy because he doesn't like all this bureaucracy. But then you turn around in the next scene and he's evil. And so like, what are you trying to say? They make specific references to the thing being a for-profit prison, which is an extremely important issue in the world today, with over incarceration of for-profit prisons leading to millions of people, especially minorities, being thrown in on mandatory minimum sentences for small little drug charges. Like, this is real stuff. You can make really important arguments about this. And I don't get the sense that they're doing anything here. I mean, first off, they choose death row inmates.
Well, that's what you can play with. That though is the philosophical nature of nature versus nurture,
right?
And it's the idea of maybe they're the only reason why they're evil is because they were brought up in evil environments, and any sort of difference in the island setting could really make them really choose a side on that whole debate, where maybe these people are actually good at heart, but it was because they grew up in these shitty situations that caused them to react accordingly. And you're just like, I mean, I don't want to justify it, but like, take the mother at the two kids who grew up in a very abusive household, or she was with an abusive husband, and you know, her kids were undeserving. I don't know.
They were kind of shitty kids.
Yeah,
for being fair.
So you sort of you have this little niche in the back of your mind, this little cognitive dissonance that says like, I don't want to feel for this character, but maybe I wouldn't have snapped, but like I would have really like had a lot of mental turmoil if I was in her situation. So the way I see it is, this show, it's like if someone was cooking a really complicated dish and stumbled into every ingredient, like clumsily just like was like, whoa, and just dumped every ingredient but perfectly into all the pans, and just bumped into them in such a way that it just made the dish really well. And you're like,
but then they burnt
they burnt it at the end, or they just dropped it on the floor. and that's what it's so like. I can't give it credit for these deep questions that they can try to answer, at least these debates that they're trying to spark up.
But it looks like they put themselves in the position where they can ask questions and then they don't ask them, because it seems like they take a stance. Like, I still don't know. Because you say like, oh, you know, maybe you can rehabilitate people. So is the idea then that they're like for this, that this is a good thing? Because it's certainly not framed like that. The prison is framed like evil, like they're committing these things. And for the first episode where you see this, you really get this George Orwell kind of like 1984 feeling of like, this is the future. This is how they're going to treat us. We need to like fight back against this. They treat them like they're terribly. They control their minds. Like, that's really screwed up. And like, they don't have any say over like what goes on in their own brains. And then they come around in the next episode and they're like, oh, you signed a waiver.
Yeah, you volunteered.
It's like, okay, so now what do I think about this?
Yeah.
Because I was like, I had all this righteous anger, and I'm like, well, then
What do I direct it
what?
to?
Are they evil? I don't know. Do they even care? And like, and then while I'm thinking about all this, I come to this like giant revelation that none of this matters at all. Because if you really think about it, if they have the ability to erase people's minds, why do they need the island? Like, okay, the whole big simulated reality thing, like that's cool. That's 2020. Like that's what sci-fi is going to be in the future. That's the kind of thing that we need to think about. You know, that's the hotness. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've written shit like that in my spare time. Like, I think it's a cool concept. But you're burying the lead here. You can erase people's minds. Like, I think that's all you need. You take your 10 people, you wipe their memories, and then you let them loose in just like the Great Plains somewhere and like see what they do. Make sure they don't get any like close to any civilization, but you know, all the money you spend on these simulations, you could just like patrol them or whatever. Put them in rural Canada. You don't need a simulation. You can see what they do to each other in the real world. If one of them kills the other one, it doesn't matter. That was what you were gonna do to them anyway. Like, I don't get why they need the island other than for it to just be a gimmick to get people
Well,
to
I
watch
think
the show.
if I really want to scrape the bottom of the barrel, it's the idea of having a primitive setting where there's no influence in any sort of advancement, so that the only thing that they have is their instinctual feelings on one another.
Then put them on an
Yeah,
actual island. Don't simulate it. Like, that's gotta be less expensive than all of the shit that goes into it. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that Mitchell and Webb look. It's a British sketch comedy show from the early 2000s where they literally had this one sketch where they're like the CIA and the FBI, or just the CIA, sitting around a smoky room talking about faking the moon landing, and they come to the conclusion that it would be less expensive to just go to the moon than to fake the moon landing, so they just go to the moon. Like, that's basically what's going to go on here. Like, just go to an island.
well,
It's less expensive than all the crap that you're pouring into
so
this stupid
my
simulation.
devil's advocate is that because then you have the ability to run multiple tests where you run island simulation number 1 and it pans out a certain way. You wipe them again, you have island simulation number 2, and then you have a big test sample to compare all your answers to then come to the conclusion of whether or not they're evil or not.
But again, we can still wipe minds, so you can still just keep wiping them and putting them back. I'll give you, yeah, it's definitely much more convenient to have them in one central location. But
Plus, like, I mean, if they're actually there on the island and they do get eaten by a shark, like, you can't just pull them out all of a sudden without like breaking the immersion or something like that.
but the whole conceit that they say stupidly is, oh, if you die on the island, you die in real life.
Which was dumb. Yeah, I didn't like that. It
Yeah,
was more
dumb
so
as hell.
because you can have the Westworld thing where if you kill them, they just get taken back to repair and they come back in.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fun shit you can do with that. Just like I mean, like you can have like 100 realities in the course of one episode. The Good Place did that, and it was hilarious. And I know that they're not going for comedy here. I wish they were; it would be better. But I don't think it's creative. I think it's stupid, and I think that they just put the simulation stuff in there just to be topical and current, and that there's absolutely no need for it in this overall.
Well, then there's also another philosophical thing is that could actually be benefited from the simulation is the idea of, well, if these people know that if the people are on the island and they think they're on an island, then they're going to try their best to survive. And if they're murderers, and you have this whole nature nurture debate, will they behave differently? And if they're just on the island, and you're like, okay, cool. Well, then what if you tell them that it's a simulation? How would they behave knowing that their actions have no consequence?
They do tell them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
They don't mean to.
And
but,
it's that sort of thing that then you have an entire episode to see like how they unpack that, and do they resort back to and this would be the debate in the nature side, where now that they know that their actions don't have consequences, do they tap into that more sadistic urge to kill or to maim or to rape or do things like that,
Yeah, and there's a little Lord of the Flies reference too in the beginning. She wakes up holding a shell, but it doesn't really turn Lord of the Fliesy. They're not organized enough to be Lord of the Flies. Like, they're just they're a mess. But I think crap, I had a point, and then Lord of the Flies distracted me.
It's just like this show could have gone in so many different directions, and it chose to sort of do all of them really, really, really quickly.
Oh yeah, yeah. Here's what I was gonna say. I think it would have been cool if you really wanted that stupid reveal at the end. You're like, oh, you're actually old. If they establish that they can reboot the thing, which they actually didn't do, I think they should have at some point.
Yeah.
That would have been a cool reveal at the end where they're like, oh, you know how you woke up and you thought this was the first time we did this? This was actually like the billionth time that we've done this. Like that would have been kind of neat.
Yeah, and there's like so many when you have the simulation, it adds a different dimensions to what you can do when it comes to having these philosophical conversations.
Yeah. So I think we're basically doing our pitches now, which is fine. On that in that in that regard, I'll get a little bit more detailed. I've said before I hate Amnesia. But I think what would if you want to keep the idea of criminals again, I wouldn't even go the route of criminals. I mean, I'm not going to say the first idea that I would do because it may possibly be a half-written novel in a folder on my desktop right now that I don't want to reveal to the world. But I'll say the second idea. This should definitely be. I mean, I would have it as some people who like opted into this and not just as death row inmates, like people who volunteered and like now they're like regretting it and they don't really know. And okay, so you want, but again, we're sticking with the death row inmates because that's the decision they made. So we're going to try and improve that. I think that rather than wiping their memories entirely, it would have been really cool if you kept most of their memories and then took out their crimes. So now they have this concept of self. They know who they are. So you as the audience gets to learn who they are from them the natural way. You don't have to learn it from stupid flashbacks that they don't fully understand. And then as they go on, they start to figure out stuff about what they did. And now they have this really like just completely alienating like sense of themselves where, and this is kind of getting into psychological horror, which this clearly isn't, but like you know who you are, and now all of a sudden you find out that you did this terrible thing that you did not think you were capable of, and now you have to like actually deal with the fact that this is who you actually are. And some of them I'm sure would deal with it better than others. Some might actually have like a sense of peace and dharma about it, like, well, this is who I am now. And others would be driven completely insane by that. And I think that would be a really cool thing to play with. Alternatively, if you don't want to give them their identities back, give them fake identities. Like have them wake up knowing who they are, even though that's not who they are, but having them like think who they are, so that like near the end they realize like this is not who that I am, so that they actually have a sense of self to have an existential crisis about if they don't know who they are, how are they supposed to have an existential crisis?
Yeah, it's sort of like both concepts use the idea of cognitive dissonance as a driving device for character development.
Right. And if you don't know who you are, how would you even have any cognitive dissonance? You have no like context. You're just like, oh, I guess I am a serial killer. Your guess is as good as mine.
Well, it's sort of like on the idea of it just plays on these little niches where it's like because like the whole idea of amnesia, at least for a lot of movies, is that you have the ability to get it back. You can get your memories back, and therefore there's sort of like this small hook in the back of your mind that's sort of holding on to these memory fragments that it takes some sort of realization or just a bunch of small things put together to sort of repair that bridge between those memories. And so that's sort of like the idea of cognitive dissonance, where like if you're told that you act like this, and you sort of like, do I don't know, like I kind of feel that it goes against your morals, and maybe the morals weren't wiped with the amnesia because it's part of your personality, but the memory is, and that's what causes that dissonance. That could really be a useful plot device.
And then you get the characters who like see this as a chance to like completely cleanse themselves and like turn over a new leaf. And then you have the other characters who see this as license for them to just go on a killing spree, because they're like, well, I am who I am, I can't change that. And you have a really interesting philosophical debate about like who we are at our core, which is, I think, the kind of thing that this show really set itself up well to a question that the show set itself up to ask, and then just does not bother to ask.
What's also like what you can really build on is the whole idea of an artificial limbo, where the people in the high chairs that we as the audience maybe will question the decisions of, they're the ones playing God. They're the ones at the end of the day. They're in this. They have control over this island limbo, and they have the ability to either kill them based off of their actions, or release them, let them go based on their actions within the island, this purgatory. And so that's another conversation you can bring up with a lot of people is like, well, these people upstairs are playing God, but if we don't agree with what they're doing, then what is the idea of penance? Like, how are we? Who can be really the judge of how these people act?
An island as purgatory? I've never heard of anyone doing anything like that before.
Well, yeah, but let's say the idea of like usually with purgatory, there's an unseen force that pulls them up. But with this thing, is we get to sit in the director's chair and see the people who are actually making those decisions to send them to either kill them or set them free.
Any irony here is completely lost on me.
But it's exciting to even talk about what the potential of the movie or the essence of the movie. I keep saying the movie, the essence of the show could have been. And maybe it's because they didn't think they were going to get a second season. Like they were just sort of like, let's wrap this up and maybe we'll get a second season. But there was so much lost potential on what it could have been.
Well, I think as far as a second season goes, I mean, there's like 3 different possibilities, right? Either no one watches this and it gets terrible reviews and then they just decide not to make a second season, which honestly, that's the most likely thing. That's option 1. Option 2, people actually watch it and have fun with it because it's so bad it's good, and then they decide to make a new season and they don't realize that that's what people like think about it, so they like try to make it better, and like that's bad. Or the third option is that they know that people think it's so bad that it's good, and so they try to make something, like they try to recreate so bad that it's good, which is the worst thing that you could possibly do, because that is how you go from so bad that it's good to just boring. And the last thing that you want when you're making a bad show or a bad movie is to be boring. Look at Best Friends, right? Which is the show or the movie that Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero made years later after The Room, trying to recreate the ridiculousness of The Room. It sucks because it's just boring. Mm-hmm. There's nothing fun about it. It's not like so bad it's good like The Office. Wow, I'm sorry, The Office. I'm tired, guys. It's been a long day. Like The Room,
the subset of The Office.
Yeah. No, yeah. I'm tired because of The Office, but that's completely different Office here. I think I'm actually looking at The Office on Netflix right now as I'm scanning through, looking for something to watch next week. So maybe that's where my mind is.
Let's say with the way they ended it, I don't even think they can make a second season with those exact same reasons as to what you just said. It's the way they wrapped it up, the way they forced it. They forced this character development. They sort of in an attempt to try to get a second season, they closed off any chance of them having a second season that would actually be somewhat continuous from the first one.
Yeah, you're out of characters to redeem. Maybe the husband dude, because like he killed the mother-in-law by accident, but like I'm in no rush.
With what that setup was, I'm just not interested. And again, what you said before about like if they find out that, or if they think that people are watching it because it's so bad it's good, then it's just gonna turn out poorly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as far as the next episode, were you able to latch on to something good?
I don't know. I'm browsing Netflix right now. Do you have any ideas? Because I know I kind of like jumped in front of the last 3 episodes, and I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, it's fine. Let me look at the Notion doc. Let's see what we have. It is Spooktober.
That's true. Oh yeah, I had an idea for we should do the Slender Man movie. I don't know if we want to do that right now. Do you want to?
So next Monday is September 30th. I mean, we can get into.
I mean, let's be real. It's not going to release until October anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it would be fun to maybe compare that a little bit to Marble Hornets. Not all of Marble Hornets, because that's a lot to get through, but like maybe watch a couple episodes of that, get an idea of how to do Slender Man correctly, and how I don't think you could ever really do it correctly for like a Hollywood movie.
Yeah, I can send you. There's a YouTube channel called Night Mind, and they do a really good summary on Marble Hornets and a really good like analysis. So instead of having to watch
Okay.
all of it, it's real. I highly recommend it.
That's a good idea. All
Okay.
right. So Slenderman next week, we're gonna talk about how to do it right and how to do it wrong. And we have some pretty good examples. Although I haven't actually seen the movie, I just have heard it's awful. Maybe I'll like it. I probably won't though.
All right. So to kick off Spooktober and our pretty much our first seasonal event, we are going to do Slenderman and Marble Hornets. Please check out that series, Marble Hornets, because man, it is some good stuff to get you in the
It
mood.
definitely it's uncanny and it's creepy. It's not like straight up shock. Like I don't like jump scares, and it doesn't have that. It's just like creepy back of your mind. Like, is there something out there? I don't know, but if there is, man, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah, and for if you want to check out a lot of good horror series, including analysis on Marble Hornets, please check out Night Mind. He does some fantastic work, and he'll probably tell you to go watch it as well to really get that sense of terror that is really missed. He's my Lindsay Ellis, I guess, would be the.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, until then, we will see you all next time. Goodbye, everyone.
See you guys.